Thank you so much. Now, I can't guarantee that I'm going to be a friend you can eat, but let's see how it goes. Now, there are many of you here in the room, which tells me three things about you. First, you like dirty. Second, you like tricks. And third, you like front end. Is that correct? Yes. The question is, of course, how dirty are you willing to go? Right? Because the things you're going to see over the next half an hour, you're not going to be able to unsee. Which is why I don't take any credit, nor responsibility for what happens next. Right? And you think, well, you're going to enjoy a little show here. No. You're going to do the hard work, and I'm going to reward you with with chocolates. Right? From Vilnius, Lithuania, and they're actually pretty good. So the way we're going to do it is, I'm going to pose a ridiculously simple or interesting challenge. And if you think that you have a good idea, just shout, right? And if your idea is good, I'm just going to throw it to you. Does it sound fair to you? Very motivated? I can see that in your eyes. All right. Are you excited? Yeah, well, whatever. All right, let's see how it goes. All right, so my name is Vitaly, and I'm actually a co-founder and editor of Smashing Magazine, an online magazine for designers and developers. And most time of my life is actually spent on Smashing, but I also do a bit of consulting here and there, and also run workshops and this kind of thing. Right? But this is what we're going to talk about today. Let's dive right into it. Right? So here's the deal. Now we love one thing about our culture and the web that we love, right? We love emoji. But what are emoji? What can we do with emoji? How can we hack emoji? Can we morph one emoji into another one with JavaScript or CSS? Can it be a replacement for SVG or icon font? Can we use like as a third option when we're embedding illustrations or icons? Have you played with emoji in your real projects? Okay, who wants to leave at this point? Nobody yet, all right? Emojis are really, really cool. I mean, they can be used in many different scenarios, actually. Now, there are some weird ones out there, like really weird ones. This is one of my favorite ones, which is the clockwise rightwards and leftwards open circle arrows with circled one overlay, also known as U1F502, which is obviously sometimes used. There is another one, which is also pretty fancy, a person raising both hands in celebration, also known as a Festivus miracle emoji, which I think is pretty cool, right? But, these are kind of like boring emoji. We can't use them properly unless we're chatting or using like conversational interface. What about something more useful, right? These are my favorite emojis ever. Well, that's not quite right, because these are my favorite ones. I like lollipop, the burning thing, and the circus. Now, we actually tried to build them in our existing website, and we're working on a few prototypes for Smashing. And I was ridiculously amazed how often people started clicking on emojis and on the links for emoji instead of actually reading an article. That's ridiculous. Now, as you can see on the top, the membership has a circus, like a tent, circus tent, because I couldn't find the membership emoji, right? And everybody went crazy clicking on that damn emoji. So it brought me to thinking, so can you hover, have a hover effect on emoji? Like, how can it work? We need to look into kind of more detail into it, right? So we started playing with it and add more and more and more. And traffic really increased, not to the article, but to the sections which were kind of claimed by emoji, which is kind of really, really weird. Now, you can, if you want to, you can take emoji to a different level entirely, like Glenn does. If you look into his source code, you'll find lots of emojis in there, like a lot of them, right? Which means, of course, that's kind of cool. You use one Unicode symbol, right, instead of a class name or whatever. Sure, you could do that and compress the entire thing and everything. Debugging is a little bit difficult, though. That's kind of a problem. But if it's your pre-processing step, that's not a big deal. But that brings us to thinking we can use and abuse and misuse technology like emoji in many different ways. Because emoji are actually nothing particular. They're colored glyphs added to Unicode in 6.0 in 2010, so recently new, right? Relatively new. They're depicted in the spec, but they're never actually pictured in the spec. So you will see like a description of what they're supposed to mean, but not the actual illustration of what they're supposed to mean. Which is why on different platforms they will look differently, right? Specifically, the wonderful green emoji, which is a cause of trouble for many people out of the world, in this world, right? Because there are so many misunderstandings happening. If you look and ask people on different platforms how they perceive this green emoji, you will see that some people feel really negative about this one, and some are really happy about it, right? It will really depend on the platform you're using. So this is, of course, a problem, because if you're using emoji in your platform, you will not know what they're going to look like on the user's end device, right? And you want to avoid this kind of discrepancy between how it's perceived. That's not cool. So some researchers go ahead and start actually trying to interpret how emoji work. Now, because emoji are Unicode code points, we can create a font with the emojis that we need in our interface and override platform-specific designs to avoid inconsistencies. Or in another way, very much like with SVG or icon fonts, we can create a font which contains emoji. We just need to draw like 722 pictograms or so, like Twitter did, right? And then everywhere you serve this emoji, it's going to look exactly the same, right? So if you need consistency, you can actually make it work. However, there are a few things you have to keep in mind, because internally, strings are represented as UTF-16, so each code point can be represented as one or more 16-bit code units. Some emojis need only one code unit, others two, which is why they're called surrogates, right? So you will, if you look in the length of emoji, sometimes there will be a combination of multiple ones, so which is why the length will return 4 or 11 or sometimes even more. So it really depends. And also, which is why you might encounter bugs like this, right? Where you actually want to display one emoji, but you see 2 or 4, depending on what the support is, right? And of course, if you actually try to style an emoji, what's going to happen is actually quite simple. The browser is going to look up the glyph in the font. If it can't find it, it will fall back to the fallback. But hey, fallback is not available either. That's a problem. So sans serif, Helvetica, and Arial don't have this weird emoji icon. So damn it, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to be smart about it. I'm going to look up maybe what kind of character it could be. It's probably emoji. I'm going to look up in the locally installed emoji font, which is probably on iOS going to be Apple Color Emoji. And then I'm going to render, right? So what does it mean for you? Well, you can style emoji. You can also have hover effects on emoji if you feel like it. You can't morph an emoji into another one. At least I didn't figure out a way to do it. But you probably think, what the hell? Emoji, seriously? I mean, whatever. That's not so cool. Let's talk something more practical. But I mean, if you need to, seriously, try to plug in emoji. You will see user engagement raising like crazy. That really works. Kind of crazy, but we are crazy people anyway. Right. So okay, here's another one, which is a bit more practical maybe. How do you make sure that in the multi-column table, both a row and a column are highlighted on hover and on tap? Now, we can obviously highlight the current row, but not the column. Now, this is what we want. You tap on 22, for example, in the middle, and you want both the row and the column to be highlighted without JavaScript. Sorry? Nth child. Well, but you don't know how big the table is going to be. You want it to be flexible. You don't want it to be like, like a setting fixed height or whatever. So, come on, people. We have chocolates in here. Checkbox. No, not checkbox. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, you're really not responsive today. Like, seriously? Okay, I'm just going to throw one to pretend that somebody knew the answer. All right, so who wants a chocolate, actually? All right. I'm pretty good at this, by the way. So how can we fix it? Well, it's actually quite simple. Now what we can always do in CSS is use a magical thing that just works everywhere all the time, which is, of course, a pseudo-element. We create a huge pseudo-element on this entire table with a negative top value of half of that value instead of the height. Then we hide this pseudo-element with overflow hidden on the table so we can actually, the background is not visible. And then we use negative z index to actually push the content forward so users can copy-paste it. And then, of course, we will probably need some JavaScript to make cells focusable and focus them on touch start on mobile phones. So we can do this, right? We can actually use the pseudo-class, pseudo-element and the pseudo-class. And the first time I saw it, I actually freaked out and cried just a little bit. Just a little bit. But, you can do that. Nobody's stopping you from doing this. And again, what you're creating here is a huge box. You're overflowing the entire table. You put it in the back, and you also center it, because you need to, you know the width, but you don't know the height. So you're going to pretend that it's going to have a height of 10,000 pixels, and then you minus 5,000 pixels, actually center it, and then you use background color, current color, just because you can. And then you can use set index -1 to push the content forward so you can copy-paste it. That's it. Kind of easy, actually, right? Okay, no reaction at all. All right, let's bring it over. This is going to be more interesting. And also, of course, again, at this point, you can use it not only on TD, but also on TH. But this is, I think that this goes without saying. All right? Okay, so let's take another one for run. Let's say we have this practical problem. We want to have fluid type, right? Now, we know it was CSS, from CSS, that we can use calc in combination of VW or VH or VMin or VMax in order to actually create a nice, beautiful fluid type. We can do this. If we just set font size as a calculation of 1 EM plus 1 VW, what browsers internally are going to do, they're going to actually first convert VW into EM, and then they're going to add EMs, and then what you're going to get as a result is a font size in M units, which is great. But as a result, of course, you're getting this wonderful thing when you have a minimal font size 1M, and then it kind of grows beautifully without you doing anything, right? However, you don't really control how it grows, right? You don't have a lot of control about the font size, the specific width or height, right? This is kind of a problem. Now, this is easy to do. I mean, seriously, we can make the type grow and become smaller very, very easily. That's not a big deal. But sometimes we want to have a bit more control over it. Let's say we want to have a font size increase from 16 pixels to 24 pixels, transitioning from 400 pixels breakpoint to 800 pixels, right, in this specific area, right? Now, if we're using VW or VH, we're kind of stuck, right? Because we're going to have this regular scale. I mean, we can use 1.3 VW or 1.4 VW, but we always have to kind of find our way, which is really annoying. In fact, we'll probably need some breakpoints for it. Oh, sorry, breakpoints, media queries for it. Or we could just use this little formula to define the font size. Now, it looks a bit weird, and it totally is, but it's totally ridiculously useful. So what is happening here is we're defining 4 things. Remember, we want to grow from one font size to another within a certain breakpoint range. So we're defining a minimum font size, let's say in here, 16 pixels. We have a difference between maximum font size and minimum font size in here. And here we have a maximum screen size minus minimum screen size. And here we're plugging in the minimum screen size. Now, why does it work? The intuition is very simple. Here we see how much area we have to cover for the increase, for the range, right? Here we see how much is left, because at 400 pixels, we have the minimum font size, right? And here we have this factor, 24 minus 16, which gives us a weight of how strong at a certain point the font size should be. And then we're just adding minimum font size, and we're done. Right? And obviously, at this point, you can also use like really beautiful fluid modular scale. So independent of VW, VH, whatever, you can really make sure that the entire scale grows as you want according to, to the golden ratio, whatever you want to use. And without media queries at all, right? And I don't like media queries. If I can avoid media queries, I will totally do this, right? And just in case you're wondering, calc is really well supported, and except who doesn't support it, but we kind of get used to it, I think, at this point, right? So we can use it today. But this is not quite what we want. We did publish an article about it. But this is only one part of the story, because when we talk about type, we always have to think about the size and the line length and the line height at the same time. They're kind of 3 ingredients as a part of it. So what we actually want is also to kind of automatically increase and decrease the line height as well, right? Without media queries. Can we do this? Something like this, but obviously, under control. If the line height is too big, this is not going to be usable. So we need to keep it kind of in control. Now we can use the CSS logs technique by Tim Brown, where we always have the minimum line height and we have the maximum line height. And again, the same thing, we want to transition in between from, let's say, 1.3 to 1.5 within a specific breakpoints, right? Breakpoints range. So what will we do? Again, the same thing like in the previous example. 1.3 is the minimum, 1.5 is the maximum, and in between 21 and 35 amps, we're transitioning from 1.3 to 1.5 automatically by using this little formula, which looks exactly the same as the previous one. Again, here we have the full range of 35 minus 21, right? So this gives us the full range of our paragraph's width. So this is the maximum minus the minimum, minus the minimum. Here we're looking into the space at the current stage, how much we have left in terms of the width. And this one, again, 1.5 minus 1.3, gives us the weight to increase the weight, the line height, and then we're just adding the minimum, and we're done, Again, the same story. And you combine both, and you have fluid type without breakpoint, without media queries altogether. So it's actually going to do exactly what you want it to do, right? Which means, if we look at the line height in here, and we just reduce and increase the window, it's going to adjust almost magically, right? Because it's kind of a small change from 1.3 to 1.5, it's going to be almost seamless, but it is working, right? And again, if you want to build something like this, you don't have to calculate all those values on your own, because you can just use this little tool, which appeared, this is how great our community is, just 2 days after this article was published, right? Which is really great. But, I mean, this is nice, this is cool, but this is not dirty enough. When we're talking dirty, we need to go to responsive email. How many of you had the privilege or happiness or both to build responsive emails? HTML emails, of course. Did you enjoy it? Is there anybody who enjoyed it? I will give you the full package, all of it. Anybody? Somebody just wants chocolate at this point. Ah, you don't lie, all right. So you really enjoyed. Okay, this was not good, but you can keep it. Ah, oh. I'm sorry, all right. So again, I don't take any credit or responsibility for what happens in this room today. So, all right, so now this is a problem. We know that Gmail is kind of bad because Gmail doesn't support media queries, right? And it's not going to support media queries for security reasons. So how can we build responsive emails that work well in Gmail? And we're talking not only, of course, about gmail.com, but also Android, mail clients and so on. Because we want, let's say, 4 columns in a large view and 2 columns or 1 column in a small view. And it better works with Gmail. Now, when we're entering the beautiful, beautiful world of email, we have to think about going back in time. Because we can't really count, can you hear me? Yes. You can't really count on JavaScript because it's not available. Images are not displayed by default. CSS support is like not good, right? And you have many really bad clients that really don't care about what you're doing. So for example, for Yahoo, you need specific fixes. For Outlook, you need specific fixes. It's kind of really, really annoying and bad. So it's like going back in time. And still, many emails today look like this, right? And most people, when they encounter something like that, it's not like they're going on a desktop to check this wonderful email from whatever brand is sending it to them. They're just deleting it and moving on. So, email developers, and if you are an email developer, please come to me later because I will hug you, because this is like really, really sad. If you are an email developer, right, you have to figure out all kind of weird tricks. So imagine a boss is coming to you, and he or she wants to, embed a button, which cannot be a button element, of course not, for whatever reason. It has to be an image, but it has to be visible all the time, right? Obviously, some clients do not display images by default, but this image, this button, has to be there no matter what. This is it. This is your requirement. If you don't get it done by yesterday, you're going to be fired today, right? This is your job, right? So how would you make sure that your image is going to be displayed and clickable, in all kind of clients, including Gmail and Outlook and whatever, if you don't have support for images? Tables, right? How would you do this exactly? Right, so you could use background color to actually style the cells in the email, but this is not good enough. You have to go dirtier. Seriously, we can go dirtier. Sorry? Pixel table. Yes. So who is it? Who was it? Oh, this is going to be difficult. Okay. Bow. Okay, you can just come to me later, right? So, no. Well, maybe not today. I'm trying my best here. All right. So what you can do, of course, and this works like charm, even in Outlook 2000, you can take your bitmap, which is like 30 times 30 pixels, or maybe 50 times 50, whatever your button is. You create a table, HTML table, with 50 cells in a row, with the 50 TDs on the column, and then you just color every single TD, because every single TD is 1 times 1 pixels, and you remove the border with border collapse none, and you are done. And the surprising thing at this point is, if you put a link around it, in Outlook, it's going to work like charm, right? So, again, don't take any credit or responsibility. But what you tend to do most of the time is actually really styling the background color for the tables. just to make sure that if images are not displayed, you can actually still see something. And there are some things you can still do in responsive email, right? I mean, this is the markup we're going to end up with, of course. And what we tend to do then, if you want to go to one column, you just use kind of moving from table cell to display block in CSS, right? If you want to switch columns, you can also use the display table properties, table header group, table footer group, to just make a switch. And if you want to shift images as well, you could potentially do the same thing if you're just playing around a little bit with those. I mean, you could potentially use floats, or you can just play with the table, with these table properties, right? So because if you look into the spec, there is a specific order in which display table properties are going to be applied, and also how the elements which have them are going to be displayed. So you can misuse it in many different ways to make things work in Gmail. But it's still kind of really shaky, and you still need a media query here. It doesn't solve the problem, right? Because you do want to have something like this, right? 2 columns in a small view, 4 columns in a large view. Or even let's simplify, 2 columns in a large view and 1 column in a small view. Now for this, you can use a combination of calc, width, min width, and max width in a very special and dirty way. Are you ready for this? Can you tell me what's going to happen if you put this as a declaration for the styling of your box? You put a width on 320 pixels, min width of 480 pixels, and max width of 160 pixels. Who thinks that width is going to win? That the box is going to be 320? Who think, I mean, of course, it depends on the container in the end, right? But you have 2 things going on here. We have min width, which is kind of the minimum width, and we have the max width, which is kind of restraining the width, right? Let's say we have 400 pixels in the container, right? So obviously, width is not going to be 320, right? So who thinks that min width is going to win? Who thinks that max width is going to win? Who really doesn't care at this point anymore? All right. So if you look into the spec, you'll find some very interesting facts. It's like a great evening lecture. Just read it. Like seriously, specs are really great things to, to have fun and learn something. Because if you read into it, I mean, there are some obvious things and not so obvious things. Now here's the obvious one. If the width value is greater than the max width, then max width is going to win because it constrains the width, right? That we understand. That makes sense, right? However, if the min width value is greater than the width or max width, then min width is going to win. Okay, you have to read it again, right? If the min width value is greater than the width or max width, then min width is going to win. We can abuse it in so many different ways. Because if we want to build a layout like this, let's say 2-column layout that stacks and grows below 480 pixels, where 480 pixels is our breakpoint, without media queries, obviously, the one thing that we can do is to use this little trick. Now, this is what we're going to set on the body, or sorry, on the box. We're going to put min width 50%, max width 100%, and width at the calculation, because I like calc, of 480 pixels minus 100% times 480. Why the hell would we want to do that? You might ask. Well, here's the thing. Now, the min width is basically a 2-column desktop version. The max width is basically 1-column mobile version. And what we want to achieve with this little weird thing over here is to achieve a value for the width which is either bigger than our max width or smaller than our min width, so that either one of those properties is applied instead of the width. All right? Still with me, most people? All right, so this is really bad. So this is what's going to happen. Let's say we have a breakpoint at 480 pixels. Right? Or what was it? 480 pixels. So if you have a parent of 500 pixels, this is what's going to happen. You have a min width of 250 pixels, have a max width of 100%, which is 500 pixels, and a width being a freaking minus 9,600 pixels. Right? Again, because min width, okay, come on. If the min width value is greater than the width or max width, then min width wins. At this point, it means that, of course, min width is going to win. However, if we are under 480 pixels breakpoint, let's say 400 pixels, well, we have a min width of 200 pixels, max width of 400 pixels, and width of the freaking 38,400 pixels, and the width, of course, is going to maintain the max width is going to keep the width below, right? And you have, responsive media query, responsive Gmail emails without media queries. Not a big deal, right? It's all right. No, wait a second. This is not good enough. It's not my technique, by the way. It's Remy Prenta who came up with this, but it actually really works well. So applause to him. But you can go much further than that. And I have like 5 minutes left, and I'm going to blow your mind like hell. So can we have an interactive Twitter wall in their email? With a, let's say, a live Twitter feed in the email. You open an email, and you're going to end up with the latest tweets from Nordic.js conf. Come on, I have some chocolate left. Very good, I like you. We have to talk later. So, where are you? All right. So, okay, but yes, that's correct. What you can, of course, say is, well, I'm going to refer to the image on the server. On the server, I'm going to regenerate this image every 2 seconds, and then I'm going to use a mimic animation with just clipping the entire thing and use transition with CSS to just, so it appears like it's live. It's kind of live, actually, because it's regenerated on the server every 2 seconds or so, but you have to find a way, right? So that works. Now, but we can also go a bit further than that. What about doing something a little bit crazier, right? With using, let's say, maybe this little hack. Now, we know that we don't have JavaScript again in email, right? So what if we want to toggle some states, right? Let's say on and off. In this case, we would use this horrible checkbox hack, right? But we use a connected table and checkbox input to control another element. So we hide the checkbox, but label still toggles its value on and off, right? By using adjacent sibling selector and the checked status, right? So this is what it's going to look like. Have a label, have an input, we have a div. We can actually hide the input. We actually keep the label on. If a label is clicked, then we're actually changing the state on the div, right? Because this is what we have to do if we don't have JavaScript support. And if we want to have this kind of interaction, right? Now we can do many things with that, but what about doing something like this? You think, checkout, shopping cart, increasing the values, lightbox, toggling images, selecting the size, updating the pricing, selecting the shipping address in an email. Can you do that in an email? Come on, people. This is pretty weird stuff here. Sorry? Z-index? Well, a lot of them, probably. But target is not going to work. Sorry?
Are you using counters for magazine?
Yes. Yes, oh yes. Because in order to make it work, we have to go back in time again to these times. Do you remember this? Anybody is old enough to remember this? Yep. Right? So, I mean, again, if you look into it, well, it can basically, the way you put a hole in it, right, kind of represents a certain state. Now, we can modernize it a little bit by moving away from this towards this. It's like looking into the future, right? So, because everything in here will represent this, can potentially represent a certain state. Now, this is what you will end up with. Okay, somebody's having a nervous breakdown. That's okay, don't worry. So this is what's going to happen. We have lots of radio buttons that we're going to hide, all right? And of course, we have labels, which are going to be strategically placed in specific places where they need to be. And then we're going to use lots and lots and lots and lots of checked. So we're kind of going, is this on, is this off, is this on, is this off, is this off, is this on, is this on? Oh, then style div this way, right? And again, it can be done if you want to get it done, right? But this is, okay, you can actually change the style. If you think about it, all of these things that you see, like a light box and the counters and the change of the views, this is just separate divs, kind of hidden at first, and then if it's checked, they're going to be popped up. And of course, you can use these transitions to kind of mimic the experience to look like it's actually coming in. But in the end, it's all kind of 6 or 7 divs or so, which are contained in one single email, right? And then you're just switching, right? However, this is not good enough because you also have to do what? Well, you want to update the price live without JavaScript. Calc, no. Because Calc is not well supported in email clients. You can do something much fancier. Oh, numbers as images. Oh my God. This is so bad. So many levels, but I like it. I like it so much. This is incredible. Now, we have to go a little bit different route. Now, in order to make it work, what we can do is to use the counter in CSS, counters. We define a lot of counters for every single thing, right? And then we use counter increment based on checked. If it's checked or not checked, we're going to actually increase the counter. And then we're actually going to show it with the content property in CSS. And that's it. Right? That's again, so the guy who came up with this is from the UK, and he's running a company which does only this for living, right? But again, remember, of course, you will not be crazy enough to actually build, let's say, 170 radio buttons and 4 checkboxes and actually, all like tons of checked in your CSS. It's going to be generators that actually generates this thing, right? But you can make it work. So in his example, they use 117 radio buttons for this. It's actually a working prototype. It is a working prototype. Multi-page layout, adding, removing products is possible, editing quantity, color, and size, see live calculation, select payment and delivery, form validation without JavaScript. How the hell is it possible without HTML5 validation? I don't know. Fallback is just a regular email, which is just the first page in this div, right? And you might think, well, this is not going to run. This is not going to work anywhere. This is just crazy. Well, you have to be careful, because yes, it might not work everywhere. We have to be kind of a bit more precise about what we're doing there in terms of CSS. In email clients, we just need support for checked, right? And adjusting sibling selector. That's it. This is the only thing we need to make it work. But in email, file size is limited often to 102 kilobyte, and in Gmail, it's limited to 12,000 characters. You might think that 12,000 characters CSS, not going to be a big deal. Here, it is going to be a big deal, right? Because you have a lot of check properties all over the place. And again, you're thinking, well, how many browsers support it? How mail clients support it? Freaking 61% is the number of browsers that will support it, right? Well, browsers, email clients, including Outlook 2013. So this is actually going to work. If it doesn't work, well, then you're going to get the first image again. And if it's kind of working and you can actually play with it with progressive enhancement to make sure things actually work well. So the future looks bright because we have better and better email clients coming up. If you want to learn more about how to build responsive emails, I highly recommend you to look at this slide deck, which is, by the way, done entirely with checked and works in an email too, just to give you an idea of what's coming up next. So this is kind of the crazy stuff you're looking for, right? Now, I have 456 slides to go through. And I'm running out of time. So, if you want to find more weird things, you can actually find me a bit later here outside. With this in mind, I would like to kindly thank you for coming. This slide is broken, but whatever. Animate, yes, it's animated. I wanted to make sure it's animated. Just saying. So thanks so much for being here. I hope that you were able to bring something to your company, or hopefully not. I'm not sure. These hacks are really dirty, but I hope that they work. And I have some chocolates, so please come to me. And also have a workshop if you feel like seeing more stuff like this, but better, way better, then please come to me and find me. All right? Thank you.